now it's my pleasure to welcome Charlotte to Major League Soccer as our 30th team. And now your new owner, David Tepper. Charlotte, you ready to party?
Please join me in welcoming Charlotte Football Club's first head coach, Miguel Angel Ramirez.
Buenos dias.
In the 2022 MLS Super Draft, presented by Adidas, Charlotte FC selects, from the University of Maryland and Generation Adidas, Ben Bender.
All right, welcome, bienvenido, benevenuto. Thanks for listening to the Charlotte FC podcast, where we share behind-the-scenes stories as well as following the squad on the pitch. I'm your host, Nick Finelli. To kick off this podcast campaign, we've devoted the first 5 episodes to looking back at how Charlotte FC came to be in the MLS, the people who make up the Charlotte FC organization, the academy, the facilities, and the community and supporters with the culture and traditions they'll make. Let's start at the beginning. How did Charlotte FC come about? The beginning. On December 17th, 2019, MLS announced that Dave Tepper, billionaire and owner of the Carolina Panthers, would become owner of the 30th MLS franchise, following St. Louis and Sacramento, and then previously Nashville and Austin. MLS is a league rapidly growing in our diverse country. The franchise fee paid by Tepper's group, $325 million. 62.5% more than the $200 million paid in August of 2019 by St. Louis. The ability to buy into the league certainly helped Charlotte's bid over Las Vegas and Phoenix. Since then, the Sacramento Republic FC, which was an established team in the USL, which is a Division II league, was set to actually become a part of MLS. But since then, it has fallen through, and so Sacramento will not be a team. And it appears that Las Vegas will be the new 30th expansion team. So going back to the Charlotte bid process and how that happened, I actually talked with Bret McCormick, who's from the Sports Business Journal, who was following this.
All right, today we have Bret McCormick. He is from the Sports Business Journal. He's a reporter. He's actually a Charlotte native, and he writes several articles about, basically he covers facilities, fan experience, and ticketing for the Sports Business Journal, which is a sports industry trade journal. So Bret, gotta have you here today because I want to talk about Charlotte FC and basically how they got a team. So you you wrote an article, but you've also kind of been covering stuff. Can you kind of explain the bidding process that like a city might have to go to, or basically an owner, to get an MLS team?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me too. And it's pertinent to do this on the eve of the team playing its first real game. Right. Actually, and if people are interested in kind of paying attention to this sort of process again, it's going on right now with Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is kind of a good similar example to Charlotte. Actually, Charlotte sort of edged out Las Vegas. They were one of the teams that was kind of in the running 4 or 5 years ago. No doubt that helps. We will get to that. So in the early days, I would say MLS kind of would open it up and see what cities were interested in, joining the league. And I think now it's a little more, not a little, it's probably a lot more selective because they've covered a lot of geographic markets like that they probably felt like they had to be in. So now it's more, I think, and this is my opinion, this isn't like official doctrine, but I think now it's more about who's coming to them with a bid that's, a bit sewed up, kind of buttoned up. And so in the Charlotte FC, like Tepper Sports and Entertainment case, absolutely the wealth of the owner was a big deal. You're seeing that again with Las Vegas. You've got people involved that are extremely wealthy and very connected and have sports ownership and especially soccer ownership experience. And then also, coming to the table with kind of like commitments almost, or pledges. We know we can sell this many season tickets. We have this many corporate sponsors that are committed. We've got commitments for suites. We've got commitment from the city to build a stadium, or we're going to build a stadium, or we have a stadium.
Right.
So it's more like that now. It's less like who wants it, and more of kind of like I would say a lot more of it happens behind the scenes than people realize. Like, and that would be the case with any expansion, but I think less now. When they say that they want to expand, I think these days they have somebody in mind already.
Right. Well, they're already large enough. It's like, where can we be strategic to help us grow as a league, or whatever, they're trying to do, or where are we missing in markets, or where could be, I know we'll get into more, but I know that the academy is also a big deal in spreading regionally, where you have your youth and your kind of growing of stuff. Yeah. That's always been a big deal for them. All right. So how did Tepper get into this, and how did the city get involved? Because there's been bids in the past, but how did they get engaged here?
Yeah, so they started reaching out around, I want to say it was like 2018 or so. I mean, might have been 2019. It's a while back now, it feels like. But it basically started with kind of back channels, with the league, and I think Tepper was interested in this, and this is where you were already seeing them go from being the Panthers to Tepper Sports and Entertainment. He's trying to become sort of a holistic entertainment entity. I'm sure in the future there may be more additions to that. This is the kind of thing that you see like somebody launch like an esports team under, and so that it's becoming more than an NFL team. And the soccer team was the kind of, I think, the second step that they viewed in that. And so they started really working on I think having kind of laying the seeds for the corporate support, and for Charlotte, that was always going to be an immense advantage. If people read this story that I wrote, a few years ago, I mean, cities like St. Louis had a much harder time with that, getting that corporate support because, just didn't have the corporate community. And so you could see St. Louis has been more out front and more vocal and more public about its bid, had been. Charlotte didn't really do that because Tepper Sports Entertainment didn't really do that because they didn't feel like they needed to drum up public support, and that's because they felt like they already had it, and that stems from hosting Mexico national team games here, and that's an interesting situation because the marketing and promotion of the Mexican national team in the U.S. is handled by Soccer United Marketing, which is owned by MLS. So anytime Mexico would play in Charlotte, MLS people would be there. They would see it, they would kind of soak up the vibe and maybe kind of want it like unspoken, but maybe everybody knew, kind of taking notes, sort of like, okay, how's the crowd look like? What's the vibe? How's the venue work? And so that was
Premier League games, friendlies also here. So that also drew up a lot of attention too.
Yeah, International Champions Cup. I actually went when Dortmund played Arsenal. So yeah, you had kind of like these auditions in a way, and so they started just working on this behind the scenes, communicating with the league, trying to find out when they were interested in expanding, if they were interested in expanding, and then sort of also at the same time laying the groundwork with the city to sort of see like what was available, what they could do. Eastham Mall was pretty instantly like something that both parties were interested in trying to develop for a headquarters. It doesn't look like that's actually going to work out now, but that was initially part of the idea. So all this just kind of got going in the background, and it wasn't anything formal for a while. But then I think when it sort of did start to get formal, that's when they started really working on corporate commitments and suite commitments, and they were able to like get commitments for all the suites like pretty quickly. And we had such a strong like banking community and corporate community in Charlotte that I honestly think that part was like fairly easy for them. I'd be interested to see how that compared to other cities in the past. I bet Atlanta like did really well and had an easy time with it too, but there's Nashville minded as well, but Charlotte I think would have been able to do that a lot
I think
easier
Sacramento's
than
probably fell through because of that.
yeah, I mean that's probably part of the reason. But you can think of some of the other markets that aren't quite as big. I mean, Columbus and other places like that it would have been probably harder. So that's sort of how it got going, and then from there, things got like more formal. But it initially was all this behind the scenes work, and a lot of this was led, and I think this is kind of telling, by Steve Argyris, who was the Tepper Sports and Entertainment General Counsel. So you have a lawyer leading this because he's going to know how to sort of sit in the middle of finance, government, league, governance, things like that. So he was
and
a
carefully
good person.
craft a pathway rather than
and never speak publicly about it, which
right.
Lawyer, that's a lawyer thing too. So yeah.
So he, along with, like, there was other members of this group, and they called it the OFP, or the Other Football Project, right? And so they would meet and kind of put their ducks in a row so that they could make this kind of formal bid. And so why do you think Tepper, I mean, in your experience and what why is Tepper so interested in soccer, or is it just more interested in the entertainment aspect?
Yeah, I think it's just a sort of couple of reasons. A, to build out sort of this empire, kind of. I think that this is like something that team owners are doing now, and teams are more than just teams. They are entertainment companies. In some cases, they're like media properties as well. So partly that, and then soccer team puts 17 to 25 more events in a venue
right
each year. So you're getting more use out of that, and that's part of the reason why they switched the Bank of America Stadium surface to turf, so they could have concerts more easily. I mean, they're trying to make more money off the venue. I mean, that's a trend industry wide. Right. It makes sense because these NFL stadiums were used 8 times a year, maybe 10 times a year, and in some cases you had some concerts, but in Charlotte you really rarely did. So part of it is getting more out of what you already have, but also it's a very fast growing sport. I mean, I would say it's the sport in the US that's probably growing the fastest, has maybe the biggest upside of the stick and ball sports.
Especially, I mean, expanded like 5 or 6 teams in the last 6 years.
And it's also different demographics from not entirely, but it is some different demographics from, say, your Panthers fans. I mean, for sure, I think Charlotte FC crowds are going to be more Hispanic than Panthers crowds would be. Right. They also might skew younger, although the ticket prices, the high ticket prices may avert that.
Cut some people out. Yeah,
it may cut some people out, but that and that might change as the season goes on. But I think the idea is kind of a holistic entertainment thing, to irons in the fire. And the OFP thing was interesting because they kept it hush hush, and I kind of mentioned this with the St. Louis thing, but I always like the quote that Argyris told me about why they weren't out in front, out in the media more about their bid, and it's because they felt their audience was MLS and the MLS owners, and those were the people they had to impress, and not try to get into a public kind of campaign. They didn't feel like they needed to drum up support. They felt like they had it, and just needed to kind of focus on what they were doing, and also not have sort of their strategy out in the open. And it doesn't mean that you can't be public. Obviously St. Louis's bid worked, and I think they'll be a really strong team, especially the venue they're building is really cool, and it's also a really important soccer city in the US. But I think for Charlotte it was an interesting way to go, and obviously it was like quite successful.
Right. And I don't think they also, a lot of times when they try to get support from the fan base, or basically the city or the area, it's because they also need that money. They need, some sort of, and they didn't need that. So
no, they didn't have to build anything. Yeah. So
right.
They kind of were ready to go. And that was interesting too. I mean, that was, I think some people perceived the stadium as a weakness. They pitched it as a strength, which, I deal with PR people a lot, so I understand how they operate. But I can see both sides of the stadium argument, because for starters, it is located in a really great spot,
Right.
and it is located right next to the fastest growing part of Charlotte, as far as young people, and
Right.
so it's in a good spot, and it's like kind of like your basic starter kit stadium. So they can, they've done some stuff to it. It doesn't have like a, it's open to enhancement. So you could say it like this: it ticked probably like 4 out of 6 boxes that MLS would have, or 3 out of 5 or whatever. So it was not I would say it was not a major hindrance to their bid.
Right. They did have to do some retrofitting to the facilities, right? Because MLS requires like a center entrance and some other specific.
They need locker rooms. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that was something that they would just have to pay out of their own, right? Because when they got this group together, the OFP, they met behind the scenes, and then they made the official pitch, right? And so I guess that was in July or something of 2019, and then it wasn't a short time after that it happened in December, right?
Yeah. So April, MLS decided to add the 30th team. A couple months later, there was a lot of stuff that happened around the All-Star game, which was like the end of July in Orlando. So they met. That's when they started doing like pretty formal kind of presentations,
Right.
meeting with the owners. And really that's who, it's not necessarily like Garber that makes the decision. It's the owners, really are an enormous part. And so that's where, as an NFL owner, even though Tepper was new to the NFL, he still had a bit of an advantage because he's seeing these people like the whole year, so because there are a lot of NFL owners involved with MLS now. And then August, I think it was about 2 weeks after they had their big meeting in Orlando. It was about 2 weeks later, MLS Commissioner Don Garber came to Charlotte. They rolled out the red carpet for him and tried to impress him there. And then it kind of went quiet for a little while, and St. Louis got a team that fall. Sacramento got announced as a team, which we now know that's fallen through. And it was around, I think, like December, early December, that the like board of governors of the league, approved the Charlotte bid and gave them the green light to sort of seal the deal, determine the fee and everything. And so that's how it happened. So yeah, once after the end of July, like early August, September, October. Yeah, it was it was at less than half a year that it really like happened pretty quickly after that. So
that's pretty cool. And then as far as do you know, as far as the fee, because St. Louis just a short time right before only paid $200 million for the expansion. And then here we have 325. Was this, do you know if MLS asked for this, or if Tepper just threw this in and said, we really want this, this will help push you?
Yeah, he for sure didn't offer it. And part of it, I was told, and there's probably another side to this story, but a Charlotte City Council member leaked the $325 million fee to the media, and I was told that Tepper had expected that would encompass everything, like all the spending on the project, so including like renovations at the stadium and like signing players and like all of it. So you can imagine, like, he was probably expecting that 200 million fee to rise a little bit, but like not a lot. And so that sort of pushed the fee itself to 325 when it got reported that way. MLS didn't backtrack on that or make any concessions. Yeah, and so they ended up paying at least 325. And I don't know what the total spend will be by the end of it, but this renovation they just did, I think, was like around 50 or 60. So yeah, I mean, it was more than they anticipated, and the jump was pretty great for the league. But I think him agreeing to pay that, definitely greased the wheels. They were, I'm sure, appreciative of that fact, because that money gets spread around the league. So
and that probably raised the bar for Las Vegas now too.
Absolutely. I'd be very interested to see what they end up paying. I also be interested to see how they deal with the city council and make sure a inaccurate fee number doesn't get leaked to the media.
Right.
We'll be right back.
So back when they were negotiating with the city, like what did they have to work out with the city, and then what did they kind of offer or say, like, this is what we're going to be able to do? Because, you know, owners can kind of do their own thing, especially if like they own the stadium, they own the you know, they own all this land. If they have all this ownership of all these things, you know, what is the city really involved with?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And that, you know, a key point in that is that it's changed because the pandemic happened, and, you know, the appetite to kick in money is appetite and ability to kick in money is less. So initially the city was going to provide like 110 million to the project, and that was going to help build a training facility at the Eastland Mall site. And honestly, I mean, I haven't kept up with what's happened post-pandemic, you know, since the pandemic started. So I really don't even know where that sits right now. But the thinking was like the practice facility would anchor Tepper Sports and Entertainment to Charlotte, because this had just come on the heels of them deciding to build the Panthers practice facility in Rock Hill, which I know would make, you know, Charlotte business leaders and government leaders like a bit nervous.
Right.
Well, they may end up down there anyway, the soccer facilities. So I'd have to get an update on that. But you know, it's not what was promised, but you know, the Tepper Sports and Entertainment is not plowing forward with that plan, I don't think. So, you know, I don't think it's like somebody's having to pick up a bill. I think the plans have just shifted.
Yeah. And there was also talks about creating almost, and I think this is kind of more from Tepper's mouth than anybody else, kind of creating this entertainment district similar to like Nashville's Broadway, where you could go from the stadium and just kind of walk down and you just have all this entertainment, restaurants, all sorts of stuff, kind of in that same area where the practice facility for the Panthers was.
Yeah, the bubble.
Do you know if that's still, or if that was part of it, or?
No, I think that was separate. So that gets down to the what do they do with the stadium question. And that'll be an interesting one, because I don't think, as a Charlotte native, I don't think the appetite for major public funding of a new stadium for, you know, one of the richest sports owners in the United States is there. I think they would kick in some money, but I think if they're going to get a brand new stadium, that he's going to have to pay for most, if not all of it. I could be wrong, but that said, that stadium, like I mentioned, is like a pretty great. It's like your first Lego set. I mean, it's got like all the basic blocks.
Mm-hmm.
I could see where they did some sort of, these days, a new NFL stadium, which is what they would be building. I mean, it would be soccer, would be kind of in there, but it's an NFL stadium. It's running, you know, $2 to $5 billion. Five was SoFi Stadium, which that's, I would say, definitely on the high end, but $2 or $3 billion. So instead of doing that, you could do $500 or $600 million renovation to Bank of America Stadium, basically like gut it and make a kind of like a new building from the structure. It would probably have some sort of roof. I want to, as the facilities reporter for SBJ, I want to not use the term dome, because nobody is ever building domes ever again.
Right.
Domes are done. It could have a roof though. It also could have something that's called like ETFE, which is like a Teflon roof, which you see in Europe a lot, that covers the fans from rain, but like leaves the field open. Could have something like that, which would be pretty cool. SoFi Stadium and the stadium that the Vikings play in have those types of roofs. Actually, I think Allegiant in Las Vegas as well. I think I could see something like that. And this entertainment district around it is something that Tepper would pay for, because he's going to get the revenue from it. So this is a trend in the sports industry right now, is owners are more willing to build stadiums and pay for them themselves, because they get all the money from it.
Right.
And so it's a big upfront chunk, but a lot of them are have access to capital. They can get loans. They can, they can get money. They have money to begin with. And so the entertainment district concept around it is that's going to be Tepper's thing. He's going to make money off of it. And again, this speaks to the stadium was in a great location. Like they don't need to. This is another reason they don't necessarily need to build a brand new stadium, because where would you put it that would be better located? I mean, that would be very hard to find. And also that land would be extremely expensive, and they already have the building down there. So that entertainment district concept is like separate from the soccer team, but also tells me that they're definitely staying in that neighborhood. I don't know exactly what they would do with that stadium, but they're not going to build all that out and then build some monster stadium down by Carowinds or, near South Carolina. So
right. Definitely. And I mean, you see in Atlanta, like Battery Park, that's kind of like that self-created kind of entertainment district stadium altogether.
That's one of the blueprints. Yeah.
But it's still far away, but it was actually closer to where their fan base was coming from. So that was kind of one of the reasons. But this is, like you said, this is already an uptown. And so it seems like a natural fit without a lot of like, I got to separate it from the city.
No, absolutely. I think, and so that's the kind of thing where you can get some city help, is they're going to, they'll kick in, like we'll do the repaving and the plumbing and things like that, but I just would be really surprised if Charlotte would kick in any considerable sum to a new stadium. I just don't think that's going to happen, but you never know. Who knows?
Right. And then I guess once, going back to like the bid, like once the bid was announced, then that's kind of, they just go forward and they work kind of with the MLS on different parts, because I mean, we didn't even have a team name until July of the following year.
Yeah. And, honestly, this situation is probably not a good comparison to most others because of the pandemic. I mean, it happened like,
right in the middle. I mean, we were supposed to play
two months later. Yeah, it started basically like, it was already going on when we in Charlotte got the team. So I don't think this is a normal process from the announcement of the team to the team starting to play. Like it obviously, one of the advantages that Charlotte had that they pitched was like, we are more ready to start. We could start sooner than others. Right. And then that ended up not even, being a factor because they got bumped back a year. So, and I know that's been hard for them. And a lot of fans were like kind of disappointed, but to be fair, I mean, it was kind of a weird, very difficult situation. And also, staffs across sports got cut, and that was not publicized well. I mean, what team wants to put out a press release saying, we furloughed 80% of our staff, so they very likely didn't have the people to move this along quick enough, and I'm not defending them, but I mean, in a way I am, because it's, it was a really unusual situation and difficult to deal with. And, I think it was too bad for Charlotte fans that this kind of happened with them. But, I think the team's about to start playing, and, you can move on past that. But that definitely was not a normal situation. Imagine like, there's others that I think had a longer delay with St. Louis. Would be even longer. Yeah, they don't even play this year. They're actually interesting because their stadium will be open, and then they won't have games for like 6 months. I guess their academy team will be playing in the big stadium or something. I don't know.
Right, and then Nashville got their team without the stadium being built yet, and they just started. I know. I think one of the reasons that Charlotte, because of the pandemic, I was talking to Sean McIntosh, the chief fan officer. He was saying like, that whole job was created just because that whole longing of like, wow, it's taken so long for us, and we kind of lost steam as the
buzz kind of evaporated. Yeah, I mean, you literally didn't really even hear much about them, and which is too bad, because I think they would have done a good job, because again, anytime you've got an NFL operation behind these soccer teams, there's going to be a high level of professionalism. They're going to be very good at drumming up interest. They're going to be very good at social media. The Panthers have like one of the best social media teams in the NFL. Yeah. And I would expect Charlotte FC will be very good at that as well. So, so like they didn't have radio people, TV people, they didn't have like club reporters or whatever, so, and then Sean McIntosh, that kind of person didn't exist. So in a way, I think it may in the long run prove to be a benefit, because I think Sean's role is really interesting, and one that we actually wrote about a big story. I don't know if you saw it, but we wrote a big story about him in this week's magazine. And I think that's a position that in the long run will benefit fans in Charlotte, because it's not common in sports to have somebody who is kind of like that direct conduit. Generally right now all you can do is complain on Twitter, and
right.
And in Sean, there's actually somebody that you can sort of get at, who is actually like paying close attention to what people are saying,
Right.
And so
and
I
then
think
takes it back and says, these are things I'm hearing, these are things that they're asking for.
So I mean, I think in the long run that pause may prove to be beneficial in that Sean exists.
right, exactly. All right, well, thanks Bret for coming and kind of sharing that whole process about Charlotte FC getting a team. And Bret is with the Sports Business Journal. You can follow him on Twitter at Bret just one T, and at SBJSBD is the Sports Business Journal's Twitter account. Thanks a lot, Bret, for being here today. Appreciate your time, and hopefully we can talk some more stuff. Really interested about facilities and ticketing, so I might have to tag you again about that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Just a note, Tepper also brought in Tom Glick, who was the former Chief Operating Officer of Manchester City and also the president of NYCFC, who was also a recent expansion team, to be president of the Panthers and really help out with not only the bidding side, but the operations to get this thing started. The Tepper Sports and Entertainment Group's financial bid, of course, was strengthened by the city's commitment and Mayor Lyles and the city council and their initial pledge of $110 million to help with stadium changes. And really, Tepper's dream or idea is to have the entertainment district right there near the stadium, similar to Broadway in Nashville, Tennessee, as mentioned in the interview with Bret. Tepper would then, of course, locate Charlotte ML franchise headquarters and the academy and a complex in the Charlotte area rather than, in other areas and not in the actual city. But more to come on that. So the MLS actually cites that the deep-rooted community support in soccer in this area is one of the most competitive and thriving youth leagues in the Carolinas, along with the excellence in college soccer and the success of the NC Courage, which is the National Women's Soccer League champions from 2017 to 2020, and, of course, the fantastic turnouts that they've had for friendlies at Bank of America Stadium, all caught MLS's eye. Charlotte is the 14th largest city in the United States and the 24th largest metro area, so this was definitely something always on MLS's mind and being strategic on where to go next. So by sheer population, Charlotte is a very desirable city to have events. Charlotte had been on the short list of expansion teams for the MLS since its inception in 1994. However, they were passed over as a franchise in 94, 96, 98, 2004, and then most recently in 2017. Many believed Charlotte would get a team shortly after the city hosted the 2004 MLS Super Draft. But just like previous years, other bids were more attractive for the MLS. The strongest bid prior to this was in 2017 as the Charlotte Independents, another USL team, the group led by Marcus Smith, who's owner of the Charlotte Motor Speedway, seemed to be one of those that was making some ground here. So it had some momentum with plans for like a soccer-specific stadium and some infrastructure already set up with success from having a team with the Independents. However, public support seemed to wane and the city support seemed to go away. Major League Soccer itself was started with buy-in from billionaires. Major League Soccer seems to prefer owners with deep pockets and ownership in other sports franchises, such as Arthur Blank, who owns Home Depot and, of course, the Atlanta United and the Falcons, or one of their originals, Philip Anschutz, who's at one time was actually had its hands, or actually his entertainment group had ownership in 7 different MLS franchises. Also, Lamar and Clark Hunt, owner of the Kansas City Chiefs and former owner of the Sporting KC, and now actually ownership in FC Dallas. Robert Kraft of the Patriots and New England Revolution. Ziggy Wilf from the Vikings, who also owns Orlando City SC, and Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, who owns Toronto FC, as well as the Raptors, the Maple Leafs in the NHL, the Argonauts in the CFL, as well as the Scotiabank Arena. So what exactly is Charlotte FC joining in the MLS? Well, let's go back to when MLS actually began. So in 1996, just after the U.S. hosted the 1994 Men's FIFA World Cup, starting a Division I tier league was a requirement to actually hosting the 1994 World Cup. So the league was started as a single entity with premier owners and investors who basically bought into this approach. This meant that rather than making contracts with individual teams, players made their contracts with the league. And then the league then assigned the players to various teams. Instead of having multiple teams bidding against each other, the negotiation was solely between the player and the MLS, which also led to lower salaries and a greater chance of MLS surviving financially. The inaugural season of MLS had 10 teams in 2 conferences. Each team was allocated 2 spots for U.S. men's national team players and 2 spots for international players. The rest of the roster would be made up through drafts and tryouts. Back in 1996, the league took on a tone of other sports leagues in the States, with their names, logos, uniforms, kits, and stadiums. These were the original 10 teams: the Tampa Bay Mutiny, Los Angeles Galaxy, DC United, Dallas Burn, Kansas City Wiz, San Jose Clash, New York, New Jersey Metro Stars, Columbus Crew, New England Revolution, and the Colorado Rapids. None of the 10 teams from 1996 played in soccer-specific stadiums, which means about 18,000 to about 30,000 seating capacity. Fans are actually closer to the pitch, but they didn't have any then. Now there are 21 soccer-specific stadiums out of the 28 teams. And the 7 that do not is NYCFC, which plays in Yankee Stadium, the Seattle Sounders, where also the Seahawks play, is Lumex Field, and Atlanta United FC plays in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Chicago Fire plays in Soldier Field, and Vancouver Whitecaps FC plays in BC Place, and the New England Revolution play in Gillette Stadium. It's also where the Patriots. And then Charlotte FC would be the 7th team that plays in a specific stadium that was geared for American football. Back in 1996, the average MLS soccer match attendance was 17,406. Today, it is over 24,500. The league also toyed with Americanizing some of the soccer rules because they just felt like maybe the American audience wouldn't understand or wouldn't enjoy some of the rules that the rest of the world plays by. But after looking at several crazy ideas, they still ultimately decided to settle on a few. One was just requiring the actual pitch, or the field, to be a minimum of 50 yards by 100 yards. So think an American football field without end zones, which is entirely very tiny. Today's actually the playing field minimum is 70 yards wide by 110 yards long. They also initially had a countdown clock as opposed to a clock that counts up to 45. So each half, the clock ran down from 45 minutes while being paused during dead ball situations. As soon as the clock reached 0, play was immediately stopped. Of course, we know it to be otherwise today, counting up to 45 and up to 90 with extra time. Some other things that they thought were maybe the American audience would not understand or like is the idea of ties or draws, as we call them. They were not even possible in 1996. So if a teams were even at the end of regulation, players were placed, one at a time, of course, kind of like in a shootout, 35 yards from the goal, and they had 5 seconds to put the ball past the opposing goalkeeper in a best of kind of 5 series. So the shootout win resulted in 1 point as opposed to a 3 points win for regulation. Now draws at the end of regulation are each awarded 1 point. So of course now the clock counts up from 0 to 45 in the first half and 45 to 90 in the second half. There's no pauses or stops. Stoppage time is added at the end of each half by the referee at their discretion. So that's not it. So another thing just want to point out is the salaries. No player in MLS in 1996 was allowed to make more than $192,500. Today, there's actually 81 players who are securing more than $1 million in guaranteed compensation for the year. The average guaranteed compensation for an MLS player in 2022 is around $420,000, whereas the median is around $200,000. And if you're considered a reserve, your minimum salary is $64,000. So these would be those who don't even have senior roster spots. And we'll talk more about when we have an episode on the academy, talking more about these roster spots and how they're allocated and how the whole system works with players and attaining them. Major League Soccer champions are actually crowned with the Philip Anschutz Trophy, which is named after the co-founder of the league, and the name of the playoff series that happens each year is called the MLS Cup. There are 2 conferences in MLS, a Western and an Eastern, each with 14 teams. However, when Charlotte joined, it was going to make the Eastern a little bit heavier than the Western. So Charlotte actually will be joining the Eastern Conference, and Nashville, who recently was an expansion team, will join the West to make 14 in each. Charlotte FC is officially the 28th team in the MLS, and it begins its inaugural season on February 26 in Washington, D.C., against the DC United, who happen to be 4-time MLS Cup titles and actually winning 3 of the first 4 seasons in MLS. So let's give a little rundown on how Charlotte came to be. So in September 2018, Tepper Sports Group, with the guidance of Steed Argens, begins the bidding process or collecting, solidifying or helping create the best bid for expansion. And then the formal bid is presented in July 15th of 2019. And then shortly after that, the Charlotte was given the team on December 17th in 2019. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. So we lose some steam, but so it's a while before an actual club team is named. And then on July 22nd of 2020, the club announces that they will be officially called Charlotte FC. There was lots of speculation about different names, but definitely having Charlotte in the name was very important to the city council rather than a Carolina name, because Charlotte would be the focus of this, and that the city itself was a big part of being behind this bid. So that happened in July 2022, and I'm going to let you listen to how they introduced the team name and the team colors and the crest and everything behind it.
Here in Charlotte, we know a thing or two about bringing different elements together to create something totally unique. So for our new Major League Soccer club, that's just what we did. Introducing the new Charlotte FC crest. It starts with a crown. We are, after all, the Queen City. A crown built from 4 diverse wards coming together as one. Set in a distinctive blue, the Charlotte FC crest is Carolina through and through. While bold engraved topography and a classical coin shape speak to our history and ascendance as a major financial capital. Minted in 2022, commemorating the special year when we come together as one to cheer on our new club. So Charlotte, it's time to rally behind our new crest. and leave our mark on Major League Soccer. We are Charlotte FC. Welcome to the club.
All right, then with the new and the actual season rapidly approaching, as in 2021, the first match was actually announced that Charlotte FC, even though they did not have a team, was fully all of their players, was going to be playing the LA Galaxy for their first home match. And this was big, of course, because Charlotte wants to sell out that and have a record audience for that first match, which they're well on track to have over 75,000 fill up Bank of America Stadium on March 5th against the Galaxy. So that happened on November 18th, and then, of course, the season schedule comes out, but the uniforms or the kits were announced on December 9th, and with Ally as a big across and Ally a big sponsor, even there at the beginning of the bid process and the announcement, Ally CEO was there, and they were definitely kind of in a good partnership beginning this whole thing. December 15th, the exact season was laid out, and so Charlotte FC would start their first game on the road in DC, and then just so you know, a lot of times you'll hear the word campaign. That is just meant to mean the season or the schedule or schedule. The secondary kit or secondary uniforms for Charlotte FC was announced on February 14th, which is kind of this newly minted black jersey. So they have the blue jerseys for their primary kit, the Carolina blue, and the black with the mint kind of accents for their secondary kit. And of course, we got the season starting. So that's it. We'll come back next time and we'll talk more about the leadership, the roles, and the people that make up the Charlotte FC organization. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon. Want to catch Charlotte FC in their inaugural match debut against DC United? Starts at 6 p.m. However, you can watch and listen on local TV such as WSOC TV, Telemundo Charlotte, and CLT FC affiliate networks. You can also live stream at CLTFC Live at the charlottefootballclub.com or via the Charlotte FC app and ESPN+. You can also listen in on radio at WFNZ 610 AM, 102.5 FM. In between podcasts, be on the lookout for a quick Charlotte FC podcast crowning moments that talk about what happened on the pitch this past weekend. This has been a production of CharlotteFCPodcast.com. Thanks again for listening, and follow us on Twitter at CLTFC Podcast and also on Instagram at CLTFC Podcast. Thanks again, and please share this with a friend and give us a like. Follow us in your podcast and just spread the news. We love hearing from you and appreciate and hope you come back. Thank you.